When you walk onto a university campus, especially like one of those older historic ones, there is a very specific feeling that just sort of washes over you.
Oh, absolutely. The whole aesthetic, right?
Yeah, you see the ivy-covered brick buildings, those beautiful hushed library arches. You see the students reading out on the quad under these century-old oak trees.
It's very cinematic.
It really is. It feels like an idyllic sanctuary, a place purely dedicated to, the joy of learning, the pursuit of truth, human innovation, all of that.
Right, because it's a deeply ingrained cultural image for us. We picture the ivory tower as this serene environment that's completely insulated from the chaotic, profit-driven grind of the everyday corporate world.
Exactly. But if you were to take a structural engineer into that beautiful historic library and, I don't know, look past the mahogany bookshelves, they might point out that the foundation is actually cracking.
Yeah, quite severely, actually.
Right. The load-bearing walls are buckling under a weight they were just never designed to hold. So, welcome back to the show, our favorite learner. Today, we are taking a deep dive into a quiet but massive crisis that's brewing behind those laboratory doors and lecture halls.
And we're talking about the escalating epidemic of academic burnout.
Yes, exactly. Because, the scope of what we're looking at today, it's moved far beyond just a whispered secret in university corridors, right?
Oh, completely. Based on the comprehensive higher education research, the systemic reports, and these academic mental health surveys we are pulling from today, this is a full-blown systemic emergency across global campuses.
And we're going to get right into the mechanics of it. Because before we can even talk about how to solve a crisis like this, we have to properly diagnose it.
We really do.
We have to move entirely away from this vague everyday notion of just, being tired. Academic burnout is not having a bad week of grading.
No, it's not.
It is not needing a long weekend to catch up on sleep. The research classifies burnout as a distinct, measurable psychological syndrome.
And that distinction is just so critical. Because the psychological framework we are working with here, it defines burnout as the result of chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed.
Right.
And it doesn't just look like yawning at a desk. It manifests through three distinct compounding dimensions that fundamentally alter how a person functions.
Okay, let's unpack this because I think people really do just picture exhaustion. Like, think of normal exhaustion like your phone battery dropping to 1%.
Sure, yeah.
It's flashing red, the screen dims, you are operating on low power mode. But when you go home and plug it in, the battery recharges. You wake up the next day, you are back to 100% and you are ready to go.
Right, standard fatigue.
Exactly. But burnout is not a dead battery. Burnout is when the phone's charging port is completely fried. You can plug it in all weekend, you can sleep for 12 hours, but the device can no longer accept or hold energy. It is structurally compromised.
I love that. That captures the physical and emotional depletion perfectly. The first dimension of burnout is exactly that, a persistent, unshakable exhaustion that rest simply does not cure.
Wow. Unshakable.
Yeah, but where a phone analogy falls short is, well, what happens to the human mind next? Because a phone with a broken charging port doesn't become resentful.
No, it doesn't.
Right. A human being, however, develops a psychological defense mechanism. When your brain realizes that you are chronically out of energy and the environment is constantly demanding more, it tries to protect you.
By shutting down.
Exactly. It tries to protect you by shutting down your empathy and engagement. And this leads to the second dimension, which is cynicism or depersonalization.
So it's essentially emotional armor. You become numb just to survive the environment.
Yes, and that armor is incredibly heavy. An academic in this stage might develop a detached, actively negative attitude toward their work.
Just totally checked out.
Yeah. A professor who used to love mentoring might start to view students as burdens, or irritants. A researcher might feel completely disconnected from the very science they dedicated their life to.
That is so sad.
It is. But it is the mind's way of creating distance from a system that is just extracting too much.
Which naturally brings us to the breaking point, right? If you are exhausted and you have distanced yourself emotionally from your work, you're going to hit that third dimension the sources talk about.
Right, professional inefficacy.
Yeah, that's the one.
It's the feeling that absolutely nothing you do matters. You lose your sense of impact entirely. You spend months writing a grant, it gets rejected.
Oh, man.
You pour your heart into a lecture, And the students are just scrolling on their phones. The creeping, pervasive feeling takes over that you are just shouting into a void.
Like your presence in the institution is entirely inconsequential.
Exactly.
You know, the sheer scale of this in higher education right now is what really caught my attention in the research. There was a Dutch survey conducted in 2020 focusing on early career researchers.
Specifically PhD students, right?
Yes, specifically Ph.D. students. It showed that 39% of them reported severe symptoms of burnout. 39%.
Yeah, it's staggering.
Yeah.
And we have to contextualize that number to really understand the gravity of it.
Right.
The burnout rate for the general working population sits at around 17%.
Wow, so less than half.
Right. We are looking at a rate in academia that is nearly double the average of a standard office environment. More than 1 in 3 PhD candidates are exhibiting severe psychological vulnerability.
And these are the people at the very beginning of their careers.
Exactly.
It's just wild that a system full of some of the smartest people on Earth doing work they ostensibly chose because they love it has double the burnout rate of a standard corporate office.
Yeah.
I mean, something about the environment itself must be uniquely toxic. We have to look at the environmental triggers causing this.
Well, the environment is perfectly calibrated to exploit the people working within it. It really is.
Oh, so?
It operates on a powerful combination of structural pressures and a very specific cultural norm that the literature refers to as the calling trap.
Wait, isn't passion a good thing, though? I mean, we usually tell people to find a job they love. The whole cliche is do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Right, right.
So how does loving the work, like feeling called to science or teaching, become a weapon against the worker?
What's fascinating here is the paradox of intrinsic motivation. In academia, there is this deeply romanticized, almost monastic belief that your labor is a higher calling.
Okay, I can see that.
Historically, universities were places for the privileged elite who didn't necessarily need a living wage in the modern sense. But today, institutions still rely on that historical narrative of passion to extract an unmanageable amount of labor.
So they use it against them.
Completely. The unspoken narrative becomes, because you are passionate about curing cancer or because you care deeply about educating first-generation college students, you should be fueled purely by that noble mission. You shouldn't be so crass as to demand structural support, strict working hours, or fair compensation for every hour you put in.
It turns the passion into a vulnerability. The institution is essentially saying, if you really cared about the students, you would answer this email at 11 p.m. on a Saturday.
Exactly. It normalizes unpaid labor and the complete erasure of boundaries. And because the work is a calling, an academic's professional output becomes inextricably linked to their core identity and self-worth.
Oh, that's dangerous.
It is. If your entire identity is, I am a scientist, then saying no to joining another administrative committee or setting a boundary around your weekends, it doesn't just feel like setting a healthy workplace limit.
It feels like a personal moral failure.
Precisely.
And while that psychological trap is keeping everyone handcuffed to their desks, the actual volume of work is growing into an avalanche.
Oh, the workload creep is massive.
Yeah, the sources detailed this massive structural workload creep. Like decades ago, the primary expectation was that you taught your classes and conducted your research. But today, the expectations have just ballooned. Academics must constantly generate high-impact, peer-reviewed publications. They have to secure incredibly competitive external grants.
Which, by the way, can take hundreds of hours to write with maybe a 10% chance of funding.
Seriously, a 10% chance.
If they're lucky.
That is absurd. And on top of that, they are mentoring a growing population of students with increasingly complex needs, serving on endless administrative committees, and managing a staggering amount of bureaucratic compliance paperwork.
All of which easily spills far past a standard 40-hour work week.
Obviously.
And this extra workload comes with little to no extra pay and often zero institutional recognition when it comes time for tenure review. The system is designed to take as much as the individual is willing to give.
And the calling trap ensures they are willing to give everything until there is nothing left.
Exactly.
We also have to talk about the adjunct and contingent faculty, because their reality is even more precarious. We are talking about highly educated professionals, people with PhDs dealing with all of these workload pressures.
Yeah, it's a huge issue.
Plus the fact that they have zero job security. They are like the gig workers of higher education.
That's a perfect way to put it.
They are often juggling teaching gigs at 3 different institutions, grading papers in their cars between campuses just to string together a living wage. No benefits, no guarantee of a class next semester. It is an unsustainable treadmill of survival.
So you have a population driven by passion, burdened by ever-increasing administrative demands, and often lacking basic job security or health insurance.
Right.
They are living in chronic fight-or-flight mode. That is the true anatomy of this crisis.
The human toll is tragic, but honestly, universities are giant, complex businesses.
Hmm.
I'm surprised administrators haven't panicked over the sheer structural damage this does to the institution.
Well, they should be panicking.
Right. What happens when the system finally snaps? Because a structure can only hold so much weight before it caves in.
Well, the fracture happens across multiple levels, starting with the individual. Chronic academic burnout leads directly to severe physical and mental health crises.
It's not just feeling down.
No. The surveys in our sources point to skyrocketing rates of clinical depression, severe anxiety disorders, chronic insomnia, and stress-related autoimmune conditions. Academics are literally making themselves sick for the sake of the institution.
So what does this all mean for the universities themselves? I mean, if I am a university provost and I'm just looking at a spreadsheet, why should I care if my faculty is burning out as long as the classes are technically being taught?
It's a fair question from a purely cynical business perspective.
Right. It makes me think of an analogy. Like imagine someone who owns a historic, beautiful apple orchard and they have a quarterly quota for selling firewood. So they just start cutting down the apple trees and chopping them up.
Oh, wow.
Sure, you meet your quota this month, you sold the wood, the spreadsheet looks great, but you are actively destroying the very source of your future fruit. You are cannibalizing the core value of your institution for short-term output.
The orchard analogy highlights the short-sightedness of the current model perfectly, because burnout kills the exact mechanisms that make higher education valuable in the first place.
How so?
It destroys intellectual creativity, it degrades teaching excellence, and it compromises rigorous research. When faculty are burned out, when they hit that cynicism dimension we discussed earlier, they naturally withdraw.
They just pull back.
Yeah. They don't have the bandwidth to engage meaningfully with a struggling student. They miss critical grant deadlines. They stop participating in those serendipitous collaborative conversations in the hallway that often lead to major scientific breakthroughs.
It creates a brain drain. The most talented people just walk away.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the macro-financial hemorrhage is undeniable. Our sources highlight data from the Netherlands as a prime example of the true cost.
Okay, what did they find?
In that country alone, workplace absenteeism, caused primarily by workload stress and burnout, costs the economy an estimated 3.1 billion euros annually.
3.1 billion euros just from stress and burnout absenteeism.
Yes.
And that isn't just lost salaries, right?
No, it encompasses lost overhead from abandoned grants, the cost of hiring and training temporary replacements, and the broader economic impact of stalled research. And that is just one country.
Scaled globally, the economic loss is staggering.
It really is. But beyond the money, when brilliant researchers and experienced faculty leave academia entirely because the conditions are hostile, institutions lose vital institutional memory.
Oh, for sure.
They lose mentorship pipelines for the next generation. We lose groundbreaking scientific progress.
Okay, so the diagnosis is clear. We know the anatomy of the disease, the environmental triggers of the calling trap, and the catastrophic personal and financial costs.
Yes, the picture's pretty grim.
It is, but the crucial part of this deep dive is figuring out how we rebuild. How do we wire a healthier environment for the people doing this vital work?
Right. And the research emphasizes one core truth here. Individuals cannot simply resilience their way out of a broken system.
Yeah, you can't just deep breathe your way out of it.
Exactly. You cannot yoga, meditate, or green smoothie your way out of an 80-hour work week. Solving this requires a dual-pronged approach.
Meaning?
It demands personal strategies for immediate survival paired with sweeping systemic institutional reform.
Let's start with the personal strategies, the things our listeners working in these environments can start implementing, like right now, to protect their peace.
Okay.
The first recommendation is setting clear boundaries, which sounds like standard self-help advice, but in academia, it is highly political. You have to treat your time as a finite, precious resource. That means defining strict working hours and resisting the urge to answer emails at midnight.
The political difficulty is very real there. When you tell a junior faculty member to say no to a department chair who controls their tenure track, you're asking them to take a massive risk.
Right, so how do they do it?
It requires strategic pushback. It means framing boundaries around productivity, saying things like, if I take on this committee, it will delay the publication of the research paper you want.
Ah, use the system's goals against it.
Exactly. Protecting your time is a basic requirement for survival in a field designed to consume you.
The second individual strategy is prioritizing strategically. You have to learn that not every task carries the same weight. You have to distinguish between what is truly important for your career and your students and what is simply urgent because an administrator is panicking.
Yes, the false urgency is everywhere.
It is. You have to give yourself permission to drop the perfectionism on tasks that don't actually matter.
And building strong support networks is the third crucial personal strategy. Burnout thrives in isolation.
Because of that calling trap.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. The calling trap makes people feel ashamed when they can't keep up, so they hide their struggles. Creating safe spaces with trusted colleagues where you can vent, share coping strategies, and validate each other's experiences is vital.
It just reminds you you're not crazy.
Right. It directly combats that feeling of professional inefficacy by reminding you that you are not the problem. The system is.
And finally, protect your rest and joy. Schedule uninterrupted breaks. Engage in hobbies that have absolutely nothing to do with your academic life. Rest is a biological necessity for cognitive function. It is not a luxury you have to earn by publishing a paper.
Very true. But we have to acknowledge that those individual steps, however helpful, are essentially tourniquets.
They don't fix the core issue.
No. To actually stop the bleeding and heal the structural damage, the universities themselves must fundamentally restructure their priorities. The sources outline a comprehensive blueprint for institutional reform.
Let's hear it.
It starts with dismantling the administrative burden.
Which means conducting annual transparent workload audits. Universities have to actually look at who is doing what, right?
Yes. They need to ensure duties are distributed equitably and realistically, rather than just piling more responsibilities onto the reliable people who have a hard time saying no.
The competency curse.
Exactly. And alongside audits, institutions must streamline bureaucracy. They need to aggressively audit and reduce administrative red tape. Give academics actual staff support for time-consuming tasks like grant submissions, budget tracking, and accreditation paperwork.
Let the researchers research and let the teachers teach.
Precisely.
The next major theme in the reforms is prioritizing human support, which brings up a glaring institutional hypocrisy mentioned in the research.
Oh, this is a big one.
Universities are incredibly quick to build these state-of-the-art, glass-walled wellness centers and offer mental health counseling for their undergraduate students.
Which is wonderful. We want that.
Of course. But they completely ignore the wellness of the faculty who are actually teaching, advising, and carrying the emotional weight of those students. The people holding the whole structural foundation up are left to fend for themselves.
It is a massive institutional blind spot. To fix it, universities must offer free, easily accessible mental health support, specifically designed for the unique pressures faced by staff and faculty.
It can't just be the student health center.
No. Furthermore, they need to create formal peer support structures, not just telling people to, go network, but actively funding formal peer mentoring and multidisciplinary affinity groups to systematically combat professional loneliness.
They also need to improve autonomy through shared governance, right? Give faculty a genuine binding voice in the decisions that affect their departments.
Yes, because the research shows that when people feel a sense of control and agency over their environment, the cynicism and inefficacy dimensions of burnout drop significantly.
That makes total sense.
And that leads directly into perhaps the most transformative reform, redefining how we measure value in higher education.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. The sources talk at length about rewarding invisible labor.
Right.
Because right now, evaluations, tenure decisions, promotions, they are almost entirely based on highly visible, quantifiable metrics, like how many prestigious publications you have and how many millions in grant dollars you brought in.
And this raises an important question about how we currently measure academic success. Because a university does not function on grant money alone.
No, it doesn't.
What keeps an institution functioning on a human level is the invisible labor. It's the deep, time-consuming student mentoring.
Yeah.
It's the emotional labor of supporting a student through a mental health crisis. It's the vital diversity, equity, and inclusion work. It's the countless hours spent serving on university committees just to keep the lights on.
But none of that goes on the promotion spreadsheet. So the people who care the most, the ones who do that invisible labor to hold the community together, are the ones who burn out the fastest.
And ironically, they get rewarded the least when it comes time for tenure.
Exactly. Institutions have to start formally recognizing, quantifying, and rewarding that work in their evaluation and promotion structures.
The entire incentive structure is misaligned. Until institutions value deep mentoring and community building as much as they value a publication in a high-impact journal, the systemic exploitation will just continue.
Right.
And the final piece of the puzzle is implementing wellness-focused leadership training. Department chairs, deans, and provosts need to be explicitly trained in empathy, conflict resolution, and healthy team management.
They need to model healthy boundaries themselves. I mean, if the dean is sending emails at 2 in the morning on a Sunday, the junior faculty and adjuncts are going to feel intensely obligated to reply at 2 in the morning.
Absolutely. Leaders have to model logging off. They have to show that the institution respects human limits.
It really requires a fundamental cultural paradigm shift.
It does. Higher education has to stop viewing researchers, teachers, and grad students as endless, renewable resources to be mined for prestige and start treating them as human beings with physical limits and intrinsic value.
You know, if you are listening to this and you aren't an academic, you might be wondering why this deep dive matters to your daily life outside the ivory tower.
That's a fair question.
It matters because the people suffering from this burnout, the brilliant minds being ground down by this relentless system, are the very people researching cures for Alzheimer's and cancer.
They're the ones solving global climate and engineering crises.
Exactly. They are the ones educating the next generation of doctors, teachers, policymakers, and leaders. If their well dries up, if they finally decide the structural damage is too much and they walk away from the work, we all suffer the consequences of that lost knowledge and delayed innovation.
The institutions that will actually thrive and produce the most impactful research in the future are the ones that actively invest in the wellness and sustainability of their people today, rather than chasing short-term prestige at the cost of their staff's sanity.
We want to leave you with a final thought today, something for you to mull over that builds on everything we've unpacked. If the current academic system naturally filters out the people who try to set healthy boundaries and leaves behind only those willing to be entirely consumed by the calling trap, what does that mean for the types of ideas and innovations that will shape our future?
That's a profound thought.
Are we inadvertently selecting for unhealthy obsession over sustainable, balanced brilliance? It makes you look at that beautiful historic library a little differently, doesn't it?
It really does.
You start to wonder how much longer the foundation can hold. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. Support the educators and researchers in your life, and we will see you next time.